Danny got the notification on a Tuesday, which felt like the right day for something like this. She was mid annotation on a usability study when the alert popped into the corner of her screen. The company is looking for someone who approaches ambiguous problems the way you do. They've reviewed your profile. This is a verified opportunity. 5 years ago, that sentence would have meant nothing, or worse, it would have meant a recruiter had found her on LinkedIn and was about to waste 45 minutes of her afternoon. But the app had been with her long enough for her to know what it actually meant by the phrase, the way you do. She had told it about a research sprint where the brief kept changing as she stayed calm and kept the team moving. On the app, Danny also documented the usability test she'd run on a project that turned out to be solving the wrong problem entirely, and how she'd written up that failure as carefully as she'd written up any win. The app knew how Danny actually worked. The resume she'd written 5 years ago, quote unquote, optimized for a job she wasn't sure she wanted, didn't come close. That was enough for the system to bring her profile to the hiring manager, who agreed she was a great candidate and then approved the outreach. Danny set down her coffee and tapped on the roll to find out more. I'm Josh Levine. I help leaders of mid-sized companies shift how their teams work with AI so they stop doing the same work faster and start solving problems that matter. I've spent the last 20 years paying attention to how work actually works, technology, culture, incentives, and the story we tell ourselves about capitalism doing what it's supposed to do. This is the audio version of my Substack, which you should go and subscribe to, working out in real time how AI is changing how we look for and do our work, and maybe eventually what to do about it. This is the Job Shit Show. This episode, what will finally replace the resume? So, if you have been reading along or listened to any of my previous podcasts on this topic, you know that I'm down on resumes. It's a matter of fact, it's how I started getting interested in this idea. It just feels like that these single or double sheets of paper, not even sheets of paper, flatten people. And there's just so much more that we need to express. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do when we have we try to reach out to people we know and make sure that we're proving that we're not bots, and we're trying to expand kind of on that. It just feels, and I think a lot of people agree, that the resumes are on their way out. What we don't agree on, however, is what might replace the resume. And that's the question that I've been getting from colleagues and friends. Well, I at least have a hint of an answer. Last week, I got the opportunity to watch a lecture that was given at the UCLA Business School by Sumanta Chakraborty, who's the founder and CEO of Nspire AI. And he said this quote that I thought was interesting and what I agreed with, which is, the candidates who win are not the ones who prepared harder. They will be the ones who figured out that the game has changed. And he's talking about all of the things that I have been talking about and that we've been going back and forth on Substack, which is these tools that we're trying to use to stand out. The AI resume polishing or keyword jamming or ghost text, LinkedIn optimization, all of those things. Those are just noise. Like, everybody can do it. It's just the table stakes, and maybe even worse. I heard that AI systems dislike AI written resumes. So maybe it's even working against our best interests. Now, the reason why he was giving this lecture, and it was, I think a good value for these MBA students to learn how to position themselves. But also, this company, Nspire, with an N, Spire, has an app called Theo. And essentially, it is I mean, it's not too different from a lot of the apps, the interviewing apps you might see out there. It is like essentially a coaching app at this point, and it does remember. It does a good job. Like if you feed it the job description, it does a very competent job of prepping you for interviews. But it also remembers coaching, remembers all the sessions and builds on that, proactively identifying and you know patching these skills gaps. Um, and it does what he says is multimodal evaluation, right? So tone, pacing, specificity, reasoning. It's not just the words. So I think this is already kind of getting there, but that's not what caught my attention. What he and his team are building towards is something much more interesting. And it is essentially that this app will stay with you throughout your career. And it's going to be something that learns about you and learns how you work and learns what your wins are and where your skills gaps are. And this was the speculative fiction that I read to you at the very beginning about Danny. This is essentially where we might be heading. This idea, what Sumatas calls longitudinal profiling. So it's like, 30 sessions across 6 months. It's calling it a behavioral fingerprint. So it's learning about you much more deeply. And then this idea of agentic representation. I hate all the buzzwords, but let's just go with that. I'm reading from his slide. I will put the images from a few of the images that I grabbed from his slideshow on the Substack if you want to look. So this agentic representation advocates for you to employers using verified behavioral evidence. And this struck me as the first viable replacement for the resume. And I just feel like, oh, this makes more sense because it is not just it's not just a replacement, right? It does a much better job. We are it something like this will be able to articulate so many more things about the candidate than the resume. And the resume, we know we all stretch it to fit the job description, and the app is a more authentic or closer to the reality than anything we represent ourselves with. And he's describing additionally that there's a way for this app to talk to other apps on the employer side. And what that is acknowledging, or what he's talking about, is that this is a two-sided market. They have a product as well for the recruitment, or for the recruiters and the hiring managers in those companies. And you can imagine a system, but I'm not going to get into that. It's also very interesting. I'll also post those slides. But um, what is the challenge and why we haven't moved on from the resume, of course, is that it's you have to have both the companies willing to or aware of a way of looking at candidates that is not just the resume. And so this two-sided market, right? It's a technology problem. It's a collective action problem. And it needs to be really compelling. I mean, we need to ask, well, shouldn't LinkedIn be doing this? Isn't that what LinkedIn is for? And I have yet to see a job application where it's like, okay, just, send us the LinkedIn application, or your LinkedIn profile, because it's not customizable enough. It doesn't tell you exactly what, these people want. And I think that there's this opportunity around, what Inspire is doing. So it's going to be even as fast as things are moving, it's going to be a while, right? Two-sided market, new technology. I mean, I think it's going to be great, and I think that people should try out these apps, and there's immediate value. But here's what I will say is the what his product Theo is describing is essentially a more comprehensive version of what many career coaches will advocate for, which is documenting your weekly or monthly wins. I mean, I've heard this more than a few times where you, as the worker, someone, the employee, needs to figure out how to remember what you've done for your next job review, for your next hiring, or for your next, um, bump in role and salary, and now, of course, even for the new next job that you're going to get. And I can imagine someone out there building their own, behavioral record before this system is really ready for it. And I think that would be a really interesting experiment. So if you're doing that, you're doing something like that, I'd love to hear. Listen, I don't know if this is specifically the solution, but it does give us a sense of the kind of the kind of approach that we could take, that companies can take, that individuals can take, that are going to do both a better job of expressing our experience and who we are, as well as making it a little bit easier for us. We don't have to, as candidates, spend our time revising and revising and revising. It really just knows who we are and can, based on a role, can actually say, here's what this person has been doing. And you know, it gives us a sense of how we get closer to our own truth, and it can even help us stop lying to ourselves about what what we're doing and what we could do. And I don't know. I think this was really an interesting opportunity, and I wanted to share it with you all. If you would rather read or watch The Job Shit Show, you can find me on Substack, joshlevine.substack.com. The Job Shit Show is brought to you by me and my company, Great Mondays, a chain consultancy helping leaders of private companies elevate how their teams operate in an AI driven world. Learn more about my work at greatmondays.com. You can check out my new project, greatmondays.com/AI together. If you've seen or experienced AI, how AI is changing how people find and do work, email me stories@greatmondays.com. I would love to talk to you and hear what you are seeing out there. And finally, would love, love, love if you could share this with just one person or even one chat group if it helped you think a little bit differently about how you approach job seeking, job hiring, or even doing your own work. Really appreciate that if you share it, rate, and review, of course, as you know. And let your friends know that they're not the only ones that think that this whole uh, job market is a shit show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.